We've got we've got lots of people, so I'm going to go ahead and get started here. So again, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone who's joining us here today. We've actually got over 1,000 registrants across 5 continents and several hundred participants, more coming in every second here, who've already joined. So we're really excited to have you here today. We appreciate you taking time out of a busy Tuesday to join us. And I am thrilled to welcome you to our first new A Closer Look series. Over the next several months, 3D Look will be hosting conversations with some of our customers who are with me today and various thought leaders to discuss important trends and innovations in the apparel industry. So whether you're a global e-commerce fashion retailer, a uniform manufacturer, or you're pioneering the future of on-demand, as we will do here today. So a few pieces of housekeeping before we get started here. We're going to be doing a few interactive polls and asking questions throughout the next hour, and we really encourage you all to participate here. We're looking to see how you feel and how you're using a couple of the big trends we're going to be talking about. There's also, you're going to see a Q&A button along the bottom of your screen. So go ahead and we encourage you to ask questions there. The chat button is actually disabled. So go ahead and ask your questions using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And after the webinar, we're going to get to as many of those questions as possible. So we're looking forward to answering those. So feel free to ask questions through that Q&A button as we're going through the webinar today. Anything that we're not able to get to, if we run out of time, we'll make sure to get back to you on your questions via email. And lastly, I just want to let you know that we are recording the webinar and we'll send it to everyone who's here. Can't promise you it's going to be today, but as soon as we can all get to it. So thank you, and we're excited to get started. So for those of you who don't know who I am and don't know who 3D Look is, my name is Whitney Cathcart, and I am Chief Strategy Officer and co-founder of 3D Look. I spent almost 30 years in apparel manufacturing before understanding that the future of commerce was really going to be built on technology and switching sides from the product side to the technology side. So here at 3D Look, we have built a patented AI-first mobile body scanning technology. And we capture the human body from just 2 photos that are taken by the consumer on any mobile device wearing tight fitted clothing. From there, we generate a 3D model and over 80 different points of measure of the human body. Our solutions for fashion e-commerce, for uniform manufacturers, and for made-to-measure companies are pioneering better customer experiences around fit and sizing and producing body data that is enabling an on-demand ecosystem and a more sustainable fashion industry. Joining me today is Meghan Litchfield. She is the CEO and co-founder of RedThread, and I'm really excited to have Meghan with us today. She was actually one of our first customers, so she's been with us for the long haul here, and it's great to have you here today. Meghan is actually a pioneer in on-demand manufacturing. Her e-commerce brand for women, which celebrates the many shapes and sizes we all come in, delivers custom fit clothing to her customers in just 1 week. Having spent almost 20 years working for retail giants like the Gap and GoPro, Meghan understood early on how powerful meeting the needs of her customers would be. And I'm thrilled to have her here as she talks about how she took the idea of on-demand from a possibility and made it a reality. So for those audience viewers today who are here, and I know many of you are thinking about it and actually early into it, Meghan is here to prove that it is possible and it's not that difficult. I'm also happy to have with us one of our customers, Vince Rua. Vince is the founder and CEO of Christopher Custom. Vince has been customizing men's fashion for decades. And Vince, interestingly enough, faced COVID head on and actually launched a new direct-to-consumer business and a remote custom shopping platform over COVID. So hands off to you for defying what other people were running from. I'm excited to discuss the 3D and virtual strategies that Vince has put into place at the forefront of his platform to engage and meet expectations of his customers. So before we get started, we're going to ask the audience, we've got a question for everybody. I think that pop-up, there we go. So definitely encourage everybody in the audience to go in and put your choice in here. We're curious to see your responses. So the question, are you currently using any 3D technology? Answer yes, no, I'm not using it, but I'm thinking about it, and no, but I have no plans to use it in the nearest future. Very curious to see kind of what the makeup of the audience here looks like. We've got a lot of ideas, but we're curious to see how you guys answer this question. So there we go. So 41% using 3D technology, that's great. 53% are thinking about it, that's even better. You're in the right place today. No, and I have no plans to use it in the nearest future, that's 6%. I'm hoping one of the things I'll be able to do here today is change your mind. So that's great. Thanks for answering those questions. We always like doing something that feels a little bit more interactive. So next slide here. So we're going to talk a little bit about on-demand. We're already living in an on-demand world. I think for those of you who saw my LinkedIn the other day, that was kind of what I put in there. But a world where consumers are now in the driver's seat, which is really a big change for all of us who grew up in traditional fashion retail and manufacturing. Less of better is how we like to describe this at 3D Look. So a place where personalization and sustainability aren't actually just words, but they're rather realities. So when we think and talk about sustainability, we think about an ecosystem driven by consumers who are increasingly looking to purchase from non-mass produced brands, especially Gen Z, which is a generation here that we're going to talk about a few slides in, but Gen Z who are really focused on sustainable design, sustainable manufacturing, and really working with brands who are mission driven. When we think about personalization, we think about an ecosystem that actually allows consumers to express themselves, not just in who they are, but actually in what they wear, which is a very different way of thinking about the ecosystem from the past. So consumers today are now driving a design, fit, and production cycle that requires new thinking, new process, and certainly new technologies. On demand is about flipping the old mass model of producing many and hoping consumers will not only just buy it, but actually fit into it, to a consumer-driven model, which matches products to consumer demand. So while many 3D technologies are driving this transformation, I'm happy to see so many people in the audience that are already engaging with 3D technologies. And while many facets of the advanced manufacturing workflow will continue to push for full automation, for design to manufacturing supply chain, it's critical now to use technologies that are actually already available to automate design, product development, and production. So we think about digital scanning technologies. 3D Look happens to have one, but 3D body scanning, where you're taking people out of, some of the more traditional big hardware scanners, and you're really empowering consumers by giving them that opportunity in their hand. 3D modeling, virtual prototyping, rendering engines from companies that I'm sure many of you are using, like Clo, Browseware, Optitex, Gerber's AccuMark 3D. They had a webinar last week with Adobe. They would be some companies as examples. And they all make it possible to really cut down on design and sampling costs and enable design teams to actually understand and see how products look before they get produced. to waste and bring efficiencies to that whole product development process. And then obviously, if you're making better products on the e-commerce side, you are contributing to a more sustainable supply chain there, because ultimately we're looking to kind of change this behavior that we see in consumers of returning too much. So innovations on the manufacturing side, innovations in printing, in pattern making, in manufacturing, led by companies that many of you have heard of: Kornit, Gerber, and Lectra. Now will be one company, it looks like. Companies automating patterns, Six Atomic, and companies looking to make the manufacturing side of it a reality. On Point Manufacturing, DXM, which is a sustainable on-demand manufacturing platform. There are many others out there. We've talked to lots of them, whether they're startup companies or bigger companies, and there's lots of money being thrown into advanced manufacturing. And why? I find this to be really, frankly, an astounding number from somebody that's spent a long time in the industry. But custom clothing is projected to be about 30% of the fashion industry by 2025. So companies like RedThread are really proof in the pudding that this model can work. And so I'm really excited, Meghan, to have you with us today, and to, have the audience kind of understand your story. You started over in big retail, and you spent years at the Gap and at GoPro, and really focused on building big brands. So can you tell us a little bit about your mission and your vision and how you got to RedThread?
Yeah, of course. And thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. So RedThread, like most companies, really sprouted out of my own frustration in finding clothes that fit me, especially after I had my kids. I just could not find anything that fit. And I found I was always compromising or, feeling bad about myself every time I tried something on. And so I knew there had to be a better way, just thinking back to my days in apparel and my days at GoPro, where we, were a digital imaging company. So in 2017, I quit my job at GoPro and started RedThread. And I wasn't quite sure how we were going to do it, but our mission and what gets us up every day is we want women to feel great in their clothes. We want to change women's relationship with clothing so they just feel great about themselves and in their clothes. Because every time you try on something that doesn't fit you, there's a small part of you that thinks there's something wrong with you. So we meet women where they are. Like, it's not, we make the clothes to fit you. We don't expect you to change to fit the clothes. So that's sort of where it all came from. And we figured out pretty early that custom had to be the answer, because we did surveys and we learned that 90% of women cannot find clothing off the rack that fits them well. So we kind of, there's a lot of different ways to solve this puzzle, right? But we quickly determined that based on all the body data we had, everyone says, oh, there's X amount of shapes of bodies, but that's actually not been what we found. We've shipped thousands of units and every single piece has been unique. There have been no two that have been the same so far. And so we figured out early we had to do custom fit. Custom fit is not a new idea. Before sizes, everything was custom made. But we knew we had to make it easy, because it had to be easy and affordable and fast, because otherwise no one was going to do it. So this slide really just talks about how easy we've made it. We launched in October of 2018. So we've been in business a little over 2 years now. So basically you just choose your style. Our hero product is our versatile black Ponte pant that, we believe every woman should have. So you choose your style. You take a quick fit quiz. And the reason we do the fit quiz is we really want to know how you want things to fit, because fit is merely a perception, right? A self-perception. And then after you check out, you get a link from 3D Look to your phone. You snap 2 photos, and then we pull all of that data together, and we have fit analysts who look at all of the data and our patent pending algorithm that creates a custom pattern for you. And then we produce that piece in 1 week in one of our facilities. Right now we have San Francisco, and then we've expanded also to Portland, and then we ship it right to your door. And everything is backed by a lifetime fit guarantee. So if you don't like it, we will remake it or alter it until you love it. And yeah, our bigger mission and vision as a company is to really transform the apparel industry from a very, what we would say, exclusive industry made for certain types of women, overproduction of sizes that never quite fit either anyway, to an on-demand business with no waste that is highly inclusive. That's our bigger vision for the world. And we're happy to be one of the first companies to do it.
Well, we've really enjoyed having you as one of our first customers. Meghan, tell us a little bit about some of the hurdles maybe you faced in actually building out an on-demand supply chain. And I know you started here, we're both in the Bay Area, and you've expanded and you're up in Northern California now. We've definitely got folks in the audience today who are kind of where you were a couple of years ago. So is there any advice you could give to them about some of the things that you said? I wish I had known then what I know now as we're going into, build truly an on-demand ecosystem to better serve your customers.
Yeah, I mean, it was really, really difficult. I mean, from designers to factories to sample rooms, I mean, everyone thought we were crazy. They just kept saying, why don't you just add more sizes? Why don't you just do it like everybody else? I mean, we still get that to this day. And we had a lot of doors slammed in our faces, and it was really, really hard. I mean, I was pitching everyone all the time on this concept. And luckily, we found a few great partners in a design team and in a local factory in San Francisco who were like, all right, we'll take a risk on this crazy girl who, keeps showing up with these designs. And it was tough. We were doing, I was personally driving there, showing up every day with like 2 pieces, and they're sort of like, why are we wasting our time on this? This is crazy. So it was really difficult. So I think my advice would probably be 2 things. One would be, don't give up. Like 95% of people won't believe you because people don't really want to change, but change is coming. And it's already hit us in a different way than we expected. But the whole industry is changing. And I know you're going to talk about the new generation and the focus on sustainability. So if people tell you to do it the way it's been done, then that's probably not the right way to do it. And I think the second piece is, we were very dependent on kind of external partners who were doing our sewing for us. And I think that was the right thing for us because we didn't really have the capital to build our own, facility. But we started in San Francisco. We've expanded to also a factory in Portland. And now we're at a point where we're actually going to be having our own facility as well to do it. So you could, if you felt comfortable, hire a seamstress and a few machines and sort of, do it on your own, which gives you a little more control over the supply chain.
How important was launching with scanning for you? I mean, honestly, you really did pioneer that because you actually built your business around using 3D scanning. So kind of where did that come into play?
So I knew we had to get the measurements. There are a lot of businesses that don't get measurements. And I don't know how successful or unsuccessful their products are, but I just don't see how what we do is possible without measurements. I mean, we're tailoring down the leg of the pants with a 1/2 inch ease so that they just are really flattering. And so we knew we had to get the measurements and we knew we had to make it easy. And we looked at so many different ways. Do you send them a measuring kit? And some people actually do like to self-measure still sometimes. So we knew we had to get the measurements and we knew it had to be easy. And taking 2 photos is really easy. But again, people thought we were crazy. They're like, no one's going to take photos. Who would actually do that? That's crazy. But they do because the industry is so broken in the way that pants fit. And women are so desperate and curious that they want to do it because they're like, wow, this is really cool. It actually shows up and it fits me and I don't have to try on 20 pairs and waste my time finding one that sort of fits me. So I think we hit it at a good moment too, where people are starting to feel more comfortable. 5 years ago, I think it would have been really hard. And we just kind of hit this moment where people are more comfortable with privacy. They're more comfortable taking photos of themselves. They're more trusting. And yeah, we just hit it at the right time. And it is super easy, much easier than taking your own measurements, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's almost like a perfect storm of things have happened out of our control here that has kind of made it the right timing. Vince, you have also been in men's fashion for many, many decades. You've created a really amazing experience with your website, and I'd love for you to talk a little bit about it. You also launched with 3D scanning. So, just like my question to Megan, I'm really curious kind of what was what drove you here over COVID to actually launch an entirely new platform?
Well, thank you. First of all, it's great to be here, and I thank you for inviting me. Uh, my industry, which is similar but different from Megan's, um, which is men's apparel, is dynamic, right? So fashions change, not as often perhaps as women's fashions, but I mean, men's shows are twice a year, women's shows are 8 times a year on the retail side. But uh, fashions change and distribution channels change. And I think that the success of anybody in my industry is staying ahead of that distribution channel change. Uh, so the biggest reason for my shift to from personal at home or office visits would be the impact of COVID. Um, let's segue for a second. Years ago, brick and mortar was the only way to shop. Then somewhere, I think it was 1956, a mall opened in Minnesota. And then for the next 2 decades, I would say, malls flourished as population shifted from city centers away. Um, and during that period of time, I grew a chain of men's stores, which was mall based. So I had 7 stores, all mall centered. But malls began to falter in the beginning of the 21st century. So in 2010, I rebuilt my business model from mall based to a different distribution model, which was really visiting my customers in their home or their office primarily. And that model flourished for 10 years through 2019, right up through COVID. And then it stopped. So I don't know how many people were restricted as I was, but in New York State, my governor basically shut me in for 3 months. So March, April, May of 2020, I wasn't allowed legally to visit a customer. I really wasn't supposed to go outside for anything other than going to the hardware store, which they were jammed, or food. So it became very quickly apparent that my customers, who I was still calling, were reluctant to meet because of concerns with COVID, et cetera. So I knew I needed another or new distribution channel. Now, for years, I have provided custom clothing remotely using various protocols that I set up. So when I had my stores, my headquarters store did 4,000 tuxedo rentals a year. And I don't know how many, but probably 90% of those measurements were out of town measurements for groomsmen. So we had protocols, but they were all involved with either measuring yourself, like Megan was talking about, or going to another tailor and getting measured, et cetera. So while I was housebound for 3 months under COVID, I set about to solve this new conundrum. And with my advisors, we developed a remote custom shopping experience.
And what does
Which,
that look like?
well, I think that the image on everybody's screen is
Mhm.
mine, and it says 1, 2, 3. So you could pick your fabric, but that's really not a critical component. The two critical components of my custom shopping experience are getting your measurements, which is where 3D look comes in, and booking a consultation, which is where a virtual meeting, just like we're going through now, which by now everybody is comfortable with. Prior to COVID, I may have participated in 1 or 2 virtual meetings. Now I participate in virtual meetings every week. So virtual meetings have become commonplace, and getting measured remotely via your 3D look technology seems to be, even for guys, fairly readily acceptable. And I'm finding that it's a certain demographic that is more comfortable with it than another. So for me, it's the 25 to 45-year-old demographic that I'm targeting. Everybody, all of my customers think it's a great idea. A few have tried it that are over 45, but by and large, my future customer base is the 25 to 45-year-old. So I think
So
that
that's actually, that brings us to an interesting point. I'd love for my team to put the next pop-up up while we're talking through this, because I do want to spend a few minutes talking about, you know, your guys' audience and what you're seeing. I think we've got yep, here we go. So from the audience, everybody, it would be great if you guys could please choose. You can choose more than one here, who your customers are really. Are they Gen Zs? Are they millennials? Are they Gen Xs? Are they baby boomers? Not relevant, probably isn't relevant, but feel free to choose more than one. Vince, in terms of scanning, it's interesting because your customer actually ranges across kind of two, you know, Gen Z and millennials. We've certainly seen that in our own customers. Megan, I know your customer base tends to hit more in the millennial. You want to talk a little bit about that? And I'd love to hear, you know, how you're thinking about Gen Zers.
Yeah, so it's funny, our customers have a really broad age range. You know, I could check pretty much millennials, Gen X, and baby boomers. And it's a certain demographic of women who are busy. They really want just like great essential pieces that will fit them for a very long time, and they want to invest in pieces that last. And they're also really curious about technology and how all of this works. Like, convenience is really important for them, but they're also, they're open to using technology in their everyday lives to solve their problems. And for them, trying on pants and trying on 20 pairs of pants is a problem. And, you know, we're really excited about Gen Z because, you know, they are all about sustainability. They're all about no waste. They're all about, you know, ease. They're all about using technology to solve problems. So while the other 3 generations, and I would include myself in this, are sort of easing our way into it, like, they don't know life before an iPhone, right? Or any smartphone. So we're even more excited as the world evolves and these new generations who are even more eco-conscious and more dependent on technology come through. Because, you know, when we talk to millennials and Gen Z about not having sizes, their response is, of course you wouldn't have sizes. Whoever thought of that in the first place? That was crazy. How did we think 20, 30, 40 sizes could fit millions of unique body shapes? Like, it's actually insane. So they're just so open to all ideas, whether it's apparel or culture or tech or anything. So it makes us really excited to see them. Yeah.
We've always had a vision at 3D Look that someday our technology would enable a world where we're just us and we're not a size. So this is interesting. So Gen Z, 26%, 78% millennial, not a surprise there, 54% Gen X. So not really all that surprising. I think, you know, Gen Z is the next big audience. So actually, let's talk about Gen Z here for a second. I think I can close that out on my side. So why is Gen Z so relevant to the future of customization, really, which is what we're talking about here today? So as the world's first mobile first generation, they're already responsible for 150 billion in spend, and they make up 35% of the global population. What's really interesting here, and I can say this from experience because I actually parent two of them, 41% of this generation is willing to pay more for sustainable and customized fashion. And 58% of Gen Zs feel that a brand's purpose, value, and mission matter. So that's very interesting when you think about how important building experience are that are then personalized and meet the demands of this. A very interesting fact here, since the pandemic began, 33% of Gen Zs have increased their online spend. So you're dealing with a digital generation to start who think nothing of, buying off Instagram and having their digital being out. Building business models focused on reduction of waste and sustainability is really critical to this generation. So, Meghan, back to you for a second. How do you think you talk a little bit about the experience of what it's like for your customers and like what's some of the feedback that you've gotten along the way? How do your customers like, having a 3D experience and getting customized clothing?
Yeah, well, one thing that kind of gets us excited and, up every day is all the amazing customer reviews that we have. Which anyone can go on our site. We have, I think, over 300 now, 5-star reviews. And it's things like, finally, pants that fit me for the first time. Or it's things like, I didn't believe it. I saw the ad. I couldn't believe it was possible with just 2 photos. And, and this pant arrives and it fits me perfectly. Or things about how easy it is. People were sort of like, oh, so I got this link. I was a little scared, but we offer, 3D Look offers 2 options, with a friend, you can put it on a table or you can have a friend help you. And people really find it really easy of all ages and generations. And, I think our biggest, success measure that we obviously very closely monitor is our return rate, because that's really what tells us if it works or not. And, we're, with all of our growth, we get better every single day at how we're using the measurements and feeding into our algorithm. And right now we still only have a 5% return rate. And, some of those have to do with fit, some of them have to do with other things, but it's still very, very low compared to the online industry average of 20 to 30%. So people always ask me, well, does it actually work? Like, yes, it does. And we know that because of our customer satisfaction, our reviews, and our very low return rate despite our growth.
So actually answer that question because we've got, we have definitely questions coming in from the audience. Thanks for your great questions. And one of them actually addresses what is RedThread's return rate. So you actually prompted that question. Thank you. Vince, your experience, what are you hearing from your customers?
Well, my existing customers all embrace the idea. Some would prefer, and those would be my older customers. So older being 50 and older. They seem to prefer still an in-person consultation. But anybody younger embraces the whole remote custom shopping experience. Now, I haven't gone down into the Gen Z age group because most of Gen Z really isn't ready for what I do. Although I do have jeans, I do have t-shirts. I think it's a little pricier than many in that Gen Z category are able to afford yet. Maybe the 20 to 24 is something I should strongly consider. But to answer your question, Whitney, the customers that I've interacted with who are, I can say all millennials, love the whole concept. They love the virtual consultation. And then when they get to the two images, you know, I've got 2 or 3 great comments from people saying, you know, this is great. This is easy. And I've just started doing it. So, I mean, for those that are watching, I'm in my 3rd or 4th month of the remote custom shopping experience. And we're just starting to gain traction because it takes time to market. And we're just now getting to that call to action point. But the reaction has been very positive. I can tell you that the measurements are accurate because I've tested it on many of my existing customers. And the garments I have delivered to new customers fit perfectly, like Megan is saying. So it's been a very positive reaction.
So in actually, I want to turn to workflow automation for a minute here and then go back. And actually, there's a question from the audience, Megan, that addresses you. But an important part of an efficient on-demand workflow is automating that process. I want to use an example here. We've been able to actually do this with one of our partners, which is Gerber Technologies. And some of our customers who were really out looking to automate that workflow and were using Gerber AccuMark 2D actually, and they're made to measure, are already benefiting from this. So honestly, the way the workflow looks like is, you know, 3D Look is getting the measurements from the consumer side with our mobile body scanning technology. And then we've got that's on the front end for the consumer facing side. And then on the back end, we have API connectors, which actually then push that data into an ERP or a CRM system. And then Gerber AccuMark will pull that from an ORD file. And go on to go on to the patterns and cutting using the measurements. So we've actually, and have customers that are actually using this automated workflow. We've been able to actually already implement this and see the benefits of really digitizing this. So I'm curious, Megan, one of the questions is around your algorithm. I know you're not going to give that up, but can you talk a little bit about kind of the efficiency you've seen in using 3D into your workflow, and as you scale and either raise or maybe don't even have to raise more capital, kind of where you see that going, particularly as you scale into additional factories?
Yeah, so this all looks amazing. So what we do is we've actually set up our own proprietary patent pending algorithm that we do have a really great dashboard. So we basically get up to the top right on this chart, at which point we are able to export everything into our own system, which is an algorithm, which then automatically creates the specs of a pattern for each customer. Based on the measurements, based on certain ease. We also include a variable around how they want it to fit. Some people want it loose, some people want it tight. Some people say, make sure there's more space around my tummy, you know, those types of things. But every single piece that we complete and we design has a human looking at it. You know, we have a team of fit analysts who look at every single piece in detail before we send it to be made. And
yeah, so that's actually really interesting because you're using AI technologies, but you're actually still, it's a little bit kind of like the Stitch Fix model, right? Where they've got amazing data scientists and algorithms, but they've still got the actual human eye. So it's almost an augmentation and enhancement rather than, you know, it's a different conversation, but lots of conversation around, is AI going to take my job, that kind of a thing. So that's interesting that you touched on that.
Yeah, I mean, nothing, you know, never say never, right? But in the next 5 to 10 years, I don't see AI replacing the element of human design and human judgment. Maybe in cars it might happen, but for apparel design, and, you know, you mentioned Stitch Fix, you know, they still have their team of stylists looking at every fix. We have a team of fit analysts looking at every pattern to make sure it is 100% before we send it through our sewing line.
And Vince, there's actually, I want to loop in another question from the audience. Thanks to the audience for giving us great questions today. One of the questions is around the measurement. So the question is, do you receive each and every measurement necessary for full custom? Do you have to interpret the numbers provided by the scan? And does it take much time to do so?
I get more measurements than I need. So I've chosen the measurements that I need for my custom garments. So the answer to the first question is I get every measurement that I need. Do I have to interpret them? I review every set of measurements because I have to develop the pattern. And the only time I question the measurements are when there's an anomaly that doesn't make sense to me, in which case I will call the customer. Now, I've only had one instance where there was an anomaly, and it was with an existing customer who said they had put on the COVID-15, which is that extra poundage from being inside. And I was doing a Zoom meeting with the customer, and I could tell that he had put on some weight. And I said, so how much do you think you put on? He goes, maybe an inch at the waist. So long story short, he immediately asked for the measurements. He got the link, he got scanned. I got the measurements. I looked at his waist. It had gone from 36 for his last custom garments to 40. And I thought, that's a big jump. I've seen it before. But the next week I was visiting his city, and I made an appointment with him to test. And sure enough, his waist was 40 inches. So I really don't have to test the measurements, but I look at everything and make sure that everything makes sense. And I think that pretty much addresses the questions that you just asked, Whitney.
Yeah, and another question coming in is around 3D models. So the question is, does 3D Look do anything with models? Yes, in fact, we get our measurements from our 3D models. So from that front and side photo, we actually build an avatar, and from that avatar, as Vince said, we have more measurements than he needs. We actually compute over, I think we're up to like 82 different points of measure. We give people the ability to choose. Megan, I think now you're getting, I don't know, 15 maybe or 20. I can't even remember. I know we've added some additional measurements for you. But what I wanted to address a little bit is around the 3D model. We've talked, Megan, about, where it goes, the avatars, and, what your vision is in terms of enhancing your kind of supply chain using, some of the virtual pattern solutions. How are you currently using the 3D models that we're generating for you? And how do you imagine you might use them in the future over the next year or two?
So right now we use the 3D models as part of the Fit Analyst's pattern making, right? Mainly around shape, actually. We have an arsenal of patterns that we use, and measurements don't capture shape. So we are using them for a Fit Analyst to kind of double check the shape, particularly around the hips and the butt and the waist, like that whole area, to make sure that we get that shape exactly right. Because you can look at 5 women who have the same measurements but have completely different shapes. Absolutely. So we're mainly using it in the back end right now for our own process for creating the patterns. I see a future where we're, I believe that, a lot of apparel will be 3D printed in the future. And so I see a role for it there. I also potentially see a role for, better visualization for customers through the process, to see kind of how things would look on them and how great they would look on them. So that's kind of how I see us evolving that. And right now it's kind of for us another data point that we use.
Great. And I know, Vince, I don't think you're using the 3D avatars today. Do you see a situation where that will become part of your workflow process?
I think I would like to, I'd like to add the avatars at some point. because it does add a little extra to the design concept. So if I have in men's clothing, we would call it a portly or large belly. Um, that can change the length of the front of the jacket. It can change how you're going to create the back panels. So that would be helpful. I can design around that pretty effectively, but I think that the avatars would be helpful to, in essence, view the person's body, which I haven't really been using yet.
So that takes me to technology in general, because I know we've definitely spent some time talking about 3D and different implications that 3D has to, workflow, process, and on demand. But I know we've got some major brands and retailers in the audience. So I wanted to highlight just how much technology actually is already out there today. And there are a lot of companies that, we've got here, and there are a lot of companies that we don't. This is actually a technology map that we put together, and it visualizes from a kind of a customer journey perspective, the life cycle of a garment and the many AI and 3D solutions that are driving new customer experiences. So if you kind of start from the beginning, actually, there are AI solutions out there that are kind of enhancing the first touch, which is what's going on in the designer's brain. There are companies like Savitude, who's got some really cool technology on the design side, solutions obviously for product development and production planning and manufacturing. We've talked about that today. Solutions in robotics for manufacturing, demand planning, inventory, distribution, last mile delivery, personalization and return solutions, addressing not just the customer experience, but also, in the case of scanning technologies, using body data to actually make better fitting product in the first place. And, the goal there is obviously heading towards what is, mass customization look like. And then kind of ending with, if you think about what's going on in recom and recycling, I mean, there's an enormous industry there. I know many of you guys in the audience have probably been following the Poshmark IPO. Trove, another amazing company doing great stuff, just raised a lot of capital. I think the point here is that, retail and fashion tech is really big business. And there has been and continues to be massive amounts of funding being poured into kind of e-commerce infrastructure, robotics, search, analytics, payments, personalization, engagement, and returns optimization. So Meghan, you've spent some time working in tech as well. Where do you kind of see, as you build your business and you imagine in the future, some of the technologies that you imagine might help you in, whether it's on the design side or in, it could even be last mile delivery. I know you're returning things to customers really quickly. Your supply chain is amazing, actually. And I can say that because we've been working with you for a couple of years. But in terms of automation and customer experience, kind of what's your perspective on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we want as much automation as possible and as much local production as possible. So the way that I see us evolving is you sort of have this army of fit analysts who can be anywhere, who are always checking every pattern. But there is an automatic flow between the measurements and our patterns and creating those patterns. You do the quick human check, and then it's automatically going into a production line that is as close to the customer as possible in a local facility and getting delivered to them in less than a week. Maybe it's a day, maybe it's 2 days. Longer term, we'll be 3D printing these pieces. Longer term, people will have 3D printers in their homes and they will be printing it themselves, perhaps. So yeah, we do see a huge transition in sort of this traditional, I'll call it sewing lines that we've all, grown up to learn about, to this more on-demand personalized, customized, which will be enabled by technology, because it's going to be one step at a time, though, to get each piece of the puzzle together.
Yeah, I actually I want to stay with you for a second and address another great question from the audience. I see, or we've seen, that the perception for customized clothing is that it needs to be expensive. One of the questions from the audience is the price to consumers for customized product is not cheap, over $100 for a pair of pants. So can you talk a little bit about, you've been able to do this and sell products that do not retail for $100. Can you talk a little bit about, understanding that customized clothing doesn't necessarily mean it has to be high fashion and luxury?
Yeah, I mean, so part of, our mission is to help women feel great in their clothes. And we think custom is the way to do that. And most people are not wearing on a day-to-day basis, these really expensive clothes, right? Those are for, the going out occasions. That's not the occasion. We're all about these essential pieces that are highly versatile. So our pants are $128. It includes, shipping, returns, alterations, our lifetime fit guarantee, all of that. And, I think the way that we've been able to do it is by being efficient in how we're buying fabrics, being efficient in how we're creating our patterns. And we really believe in we want to democratize custom fit. And the only way to do it is to make it easy and to make it affordable.
So Vince, love to hear what your prediction is on, are we going to get dressed up again? We're in a minute, we're going to actually do one last pop-up for the audience, but I want to ask my panelists here today their prediction on kind of the future. The New York Times, for those of you that didn't read this article, it was last summer, they published an article that kind of, talked about from different perspectives, kind of the state of mind as we go into, as the world opens up again. I don't want to say necessarily post-COVID, because I don't believe that we'll ever go completely back to the way it was, but are we going to get dressed up again? Vince, what's your prediction here?
Well, as the senior spokesperson of this group here, I would say yes. People will dress up again. History repeats itself. We can go through lots and lots of examples, but I think a good barometer, aside from my time on Earth, which tells me that history will repeat itself, is the feedback I've gotten from my existing customers. So without question, my existing customer sales are down because a lot of people have office visitation restrictions. A lot of my customers are not meeting with other customers in person, so they're doing it virtually. So they don't need anything right now. But every customer that I have has said, as soon as the COVID restrictions are lifted, I want to get together with you and reload on my wardrobe. Now, my customers are not any unique demographic. They're people from all walks of life, all middle to upper income levels, medium to upper income levels, and they all want to see me when COVID restrictions are lifted. Some need stuff now, but all are telling me that they want to see me. So I think that's as good a barometer as any other study out there.
Well, that and the fact that you're in a suit today, and Meghan and I both actually are in dresses, and I even put on stilettos. Meghan, how do you answer that question?
I mean, absolutely. I think people will definitely get dressed up again, and to the nines, right? Because they'll just be so happy to be out of their house. At the same time, I do think fashion has changed a little. I think that we value comfort more than perhaps we did in the past. We're seeing, we also took a big hit at the beginning of COVID. We were shut down by, the city of San Francisco for 3 months. We couldn't ship or produce anything. And everyone was in their sweats for like whatever until about now, but everyone's kind of ready to get out of their sweats. And, our message now is, look pulled together without giving up comfort, because our pants are very comfortable, but they're also tailored. And I think that's a great message for right now and moving forward. But I also think that people will, I actually think what will happen is people will, once we can all go to restaurants again, people will be more dressed up than ever before because they can. And just there will be this celebratory atmosphere, which will just be exciting to see.
Yeah. What does our audience think here? Do we have the results in? Yes, look at that, 96%. Well, that's a great way to kind of end up. We've got a couple more minutes, and I do want to address a couple questions. Thank you all to the audience. You guys have sent so many questions. We definitely won't get to all of them. But I think that last response says a lot to kind of what we're going to see in fashion over the next couple of years. And I certainly agree. And I think we are all ready to get dressed up again. I want to go back to accuracy again for a minute, because it looks like we've got several questions from the audience there. And Meghan, because we've been working with you for the longest, I think you're a great one to answer this. They're talking about, what goes into accuracy. I'll say on the 3D look perspective, and then I'd like Meghan for you to talk a little bit about the customer experience. But on the 3D look perspective, we get a good accurate output if three things happen on the front side. One is the angle of the phone, which we control in our own core tech with a gyroscope in the user experience. One is, wearing tight fitted clothing, and we've got soft validation, which is a part of our technology, which actually Meghan is just implemented. And then also how you're standing. So it's a front and a side photo. And if we get those three things in, and a lot of it's on us in the user experience, I think one thing that Meghan and some of our e-commerce customers have really done is a great job of educating the consumer. It is emergent technology, and there is an education, and it's an education around return rates and the destruction that does not only to the planet, but to also businesses, around sustainability. And we've got some of our e-com customers that have really done an amazing job with this. Meghan is certainly one of them. But can you talk a little bit about, in terms of accuracy, some of the things that you've done in the education of your consumer to get those good photos?
Yeah, I think part of it is the input, right? So the data is only as good as the photos. We never see the photos, but you need to be wearing tight fit clothing. You need to have a certain distance. You need full body in it. So that is kind of the one input. But I will say that, for us, everyone's like, oh, is it accurate? Is it not accurate? We actually have mapped the measurements exactly to our patterns. So sometimes customers ask for their measurements. We're like, well, we can share them, but they're actually not relevant because they match to our exact patterns. And unless you know exactly where that is, it's not going to work. So for us, like when we look at accuracy, we look at what is our return rate and what is our customer satisfaction rate. And our satisfaction continues to be high and our return rate continues to be low. And I will also say that judgment call, that human design element is really important for us too, because of the way customers want things to fit. Some people like them tight, some people like them loose, some people want them really long or really short. And that human element is really important for us too. So it's all of those things. It's kind of a trifecta of inputs that gets us to what we state is accurate, which is a great fitting product for our customer that they love and that they don't return.
Well, thank you. And I can't believe that we're out of time here today. I hope everybody learned something today. I hope the message is that we're all going to be wearing fashion. We're going to continue to buy clothes. It's a staple, and that technology is not going backwards. It only ever goes forward. And particularly as we kind of enter this era of 3D, the importance of really bringing in technology sooner rather than later so you can meet the demands of where your customers are today. So big thank you to both of you, Vince and Meghan. You're great customers, and it's been a real joy to have you here today. Thank you to everybody who joined. And again, we'll get the video of the webinar to you at some point over the next couple of days. And we'll get back to you on all of those great questions. So thank you again for being here today. And I hope you have a great rest of your Tuesday. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.